For our presentation, we are centering our focus on the hot topic of gun control. While the right to bear arms has been a founding right of our country, and one that is heavily protected by the United States populace, some believe that times are changing, and so should our control of firearms. For this presentation, we will be having three different viewpoints that represent three different sides of the argument. Too little gun control, too much gun control, and a good balance in terms of how strict the policy is currently in our nation. Migdalia will be arguing that control is too loose and needs to be increased as gun ownership tends to lead to increased homicide rates. James will be presenting the argument that we are in a good spot. Any more will be restricting the freedoms unnecessarily of our citizens, and any less will be dangerous. Will is going to be presenting the opinion of less gun control, as increased gun control makes little difference to homicide rates, while also restricting the freedom of U.S. citizens. The United States' history on guns has for the majority been fairly free. Prior to the 1900s, most people who own them to protect themselves, their family, and their property. However, as time has gone on, we've seen a decrease in the necessity of these reasons. Strides to make the community safer with gun control were also made in the 1900s, limiting dangerous people from acquiring firearms, as well as the partial ban of automatic firearms in 1935, eventually the complete ban of personally owning automatic firearms in 1986, aside from those that were grandfathered in. In more modern days, people tend to own guns still for personal protection, but others might not. Owning a gun may also lead it to getting into the wrong hands, despite efforts to prevent this. The three perspectives presented will cover the efficiency and inefficiency of gun control policy to prevent firearms from being in the wrong people's hands.
For the point of view that gun control has hit sort of a sweet spot with its laws, let's first look at some facts. Guns are nearly 80 times more likely to protect a life than to be involved in an accident, suicide, or homicide. There are 32,000 accidents, homicides, and suicides per year. There are approximately 300 million civilian firearms in America and about 12 trillion rounds of ammunition civilian owned, between an estimated 50 million gun owners. You can compare that to the 32,000 yearly cases of deadly misuse of firearms, and that's an approximate 0.064% of gun owners who have used the right to use arms. Only once in the past 71 years has a mass shooting taken place where guns were legal to be carried. 200,000 cases per year where women prevent sexual assault by using a gun. These are all the sources that last source had used. So let's take a look at the laws that are in place and why they work. The laws that are in place have pretty widespread support because they are pretty much just common sense, preventing those who are criminals, mentally unstable, or violent from purchasing a gun. So while the gun laws that are in place do work, let's talk about why more of them can be bad. We, as Americans, value our right to bear arms, in large because it guarantees the people freedom from their government. Conspiracy theorists or not, it is a fact that if citizens of a country are disarmed, their government has nothing standing between them and tyranny. Governments do not always abuse their people, but there are so many examples of when they have. Take Soviet Russia, for example. Politicians convinced enough of the population that, in order to save them from each other, their guns needed to be taken away. In 1921, private guns were outlawed, and Stalin moved in nearly immediately. He slaughtered all those who spoke out against his regime, and the people could do absolutely nothing about it. He killed 20 million. In 1911, the Ottoman Empire confiscated their people's guns, and their politicians had convinced them that they were being saved from themselves. 1.5 million were killed shortly after. Hitler instituted harsh gun control laws, nearly disarming the 13 million he had killed. 65 million died under China's Mao Zedong after his implementation of harsh gun control in 1935. And this is my bibliography.
To start off, I believe in gun control because owning guns leads to homicides. Therefore, I will argue for an increase in gun control. Even though the Gun Control Act of 1968 prohibits persons under 18 years of age, convicted criminals, the mentally disabled, dishonorably discharged military personnel, and others from purchasing firearms, people are still able to get their hands on guns. Throughout the years, many incidents have broke out. A more known incident in Colombian high school massacre that happened in 1999. One recent event has to do with the hate violence going on toward the Asian community. According to Nidia Yancy Bragg from the USA Today, the shootings that happened on March 16, 2021 killed 8, most of which were Asian women. Another most common incident is when adults with children own guns. Since these arms are more accessible to kids in these cases, it becomes a horror when an innocent child finds the gun and accidentally shoots someone with it. Statistics I found on the article How Do U.S. Gun Laws Compare to Other Countries by Jonathan Masters from the PBS NewsHour. As can be seen, there is a positive correlation between gun ownership and gun homicides. I know one might argue that a homicide can be done with multiple things than just guns. However, I am not saying that by eliminating gun ownership, all homicides will cease. I am saying that homicides done with guns will become less common if our laws change on gun control. There is this interesting fact on how even though Mexico has less gun ownership within citizens than the US, they have the most violence in their country. I would like to point out how most of the firearms owned in Mexico come from the US, as to say that our country needs to make some changes on how these firearms are distributed. In some way, someone might argue that owning arms is a way to stay protected. Nevertheless, there are countless other ways to stay protected and other things to use for protection, such as pepper spray and things whose use is not intended to kill someone. Whereas guns, even if your intention is not to kill the assaulter, it has the ability to end someone's lives.
Today, I'll be making an argument against gun control. Any law is a direct violation of the Second Amendment. The state of gun rights is hindered for the time being, with more and more restrictions on the way. But what has all of these laws actually done? These laws failed us recently, with the Boulder, Colorado shooting. In the CNN article, Boulder shooting suspect passed background check, gun shop owner says. Detectives found out that there was nothing within the individual's background to prevent a gun purchase. According to the FBI, in 2018, 297 people were killed with a rifle. This number isn't even the amount of people killed by so-called assault weapons. Also, according to the FBI, there were 1,500 fatal stabbings in 2018. With that being said, taking away all of the guns will only result in killers finding other ways to get their evil way. Just look at the UK, where gun laws are the strictest. The murders from stabbings got so high, the mayor of London had to implement a blade ban. 80% of gun deaths in the US are from handguns, so when politicians get done with ARs, where are they going to go next? And after that, the process will continue until American families and individuals will have no way to protect themselves and their homes. Then, law-abiding citizens will have to depend upon the mercy of violent criminals that will get their guns the illegal way. Kolian Neuer, an attorney and Second Amendment advocate, makes one of the biggest arguments against gun control with videos he uploads to his YouTube channel, which he has been doing for over 8 years. He recently had an interview on Fox News where he said, "A lot of people like to undervalue what the Second Amendment was actually written for. It was designed to be a check against the government." Neuer here is saying that guns are a deterrent for the people against the government, because the government is power hungry. Its power grows every day. We've seen it happen with great measures with the unfolding of the pandemic. Neuer also claims that recent firearms policies wouldn't have stopped any of the recent shootings, and claims an agenda to destroy the Second Amendment. When the Founding Fathers created these amendments, they had just dealt with a tyrannical government. They understood that governments will be overbearing. They also didn't have just any regular Joe make these. They had a room of wise men fully aware of the dangers of guns in the wrong hands. In their case, it was the redcoats. They intended for these tools to be acts of defense against any harm, so any way that makes it possible to acquire means of defending your home, family, self, or loved ones is a direct violation of the rights so many men died for.
Given the United States' recent history with gun violence, it is common to jump to one side of the argument or another without doubt or reconsideration. We can see how eliminating the right to own firearms would obviously stop all gun violence. However, this might not be the best idea. Will showed us on the other hand that these laws do far less for us than intended, and loosening them could prove beneficial and allow for more people to protect themselves. However, this may not end as intended as well. James provides the view of balance here. Moderation is important in this view. We obviously don't want to be risking people's lives, but on the other hand, we don't want to infringe on people's rights unnecessarily. We have seen examples from both sides showing how owning guns and taking them away have protected people in the past. So should we go to one extreme? Maybe the other. Or maybe we try to keep the balance. We choose this topic for our presentation to help provide the audience with background information and examples to see the effect policy has on gun violence. Thank you for watching.